In the tapestry of tranquil streets that was our suburb, each home was a thread interwoven with the next, creating a community quilt of serenity and sameness. Here, I found my slice of the American dream, a quaint two-story home with Jamie, my partner in all things life. The backdrop of our existence was a chorus of lawnmowers and the occasional laughter of children playing until the streetlights flickered on. Jamie and I had settled into this routine, our lives a comfortable pattern of work, weekend barbecues, and the yearly block party. We were the typical couple next door, our biggest adventure being the selection of annuals for the flower beds. It was on one such uneventful day that I sat on the porch, a mug of coffee warming my hands, as Marlene, my mother-in-law, strutted up the walkway. Her arrival was always announced by the jangle of her bangles and the swish of her colorful maxi dress. "Morning, Ava," Marlene chirped, her voice cutting through the quiet like a knife through butter. "Good morning, Marlene," I greeted her, forcing a smile. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" She settled herself on the swing beside me, her perfume a heady cloud. "Can't a mother visit her son and his lovely wife without an agenda?" she quipped, though her eyes danced with an all too familiar mischief. I chuckled, a sound more polite than genuine. "Of course, you're always welcome," I replied. But Marlene's visits were never just social calls, they were scouting missions for gossip or, as I would soon find out, much more. It was during one of these visits that Marlene first laid eyes on the car, the sleek embodiment of Jamie's and my years of scrimping and saving. Her gaze lingered on the shiny curves of the vehicle, a shadow crossing her usually expressive face. $100,000 on 4 wheels. "Must be nice," she said, a note of something I couldn't place in her voice. "It's not just a car, Marlene. It's a dream Jamie and I have had since college," I explained, my own pride swelling as I spoke of our achievement. Marlene hummed, her eyes still fixed on the car. "Dreams? I had a lot of those once." Her words hung between us, laden with a history of unspoken disappointments. I reached out, touching her arm gently. "We're grateful for every bit of it, Marlene. We worked hard for this." She snapped out of her reverie, offering me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Of course, dear. Hard work should be rewarded," she said, rising from the swing. "I'll let you get on with your day. Don't want to keep you from enjoying your reward." As she walked away, the unease settled in the pit of my stomach. There was something in the way she said reward, a bitterness that was uncharacteristic even for her. I watched her leave, the clinking of her bangles fading into the distance, unaware that this was the quiet before the storm, the prelude to an act of rebellion against a lifetime of what she perceived to be injustices. Little did I know, our peaceful suburb was about to become the stage for an unprecedented drama. Marlene was like a storm cloud in a clear sky, her arrival often heralded by a flurry of activity and a palpable tension. She had a laugh that could fill a room and opinions that could clear one just as quickly. Her eccentricities were well known, her demeanor as flamboyant as the peacock feathers she fancied wearing in her hats. The day Jamie and I brought home our new sports car, a sleek machine that gleamed like a sapphire in the sun, Marlene's eyes had sparkled, but not with joy. She ran her fingers along the hood, her touch almost possessive. "Ava, darling, isn't this a bit much?" she had asked, a slight curl to her lip that wasn't quite a smile. "It's rather ostentatious, don't you think?" Jamie had jumped to my defense, his arm finding its way protectively around my shoulders. "Mom, this is Ava's dream. She's worked hard for it." I had tried to keep the peace, offering a placating smile. "It's not just about the car, Marlene. It's about what it represents. Years of saving, of dreaming. It's achievement." But her response was a scoff, a sound that seemed to echo off the driveway. "Achievement? If you say so, dear. I just hope it doesn't get scratched. You know how these suburbs can be. Not everything that shines stays that way." Her words had hung in the air, heavy with something I couldn't quite place. Was it warning? Jealousy? I had pushed the thought away, not wanting to believe that envy could tarnish our relationship. As days passed, I noticed Marlene's visits became more frequent, her comments more pointed. Jamie, ever the optimist, brushed it off as his mother being her usual self, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. It wasn't until the day our car disappeared that the true depth of Marlene's envy became painfully clear. The emptiness in the driveway was a gaping hole, the absence of our dream a physical weight. When Marlene called, her voice was a siren's call, luring me into the storm of betrayal that had been brewing beneath her feigned affection. "Ava, how careless to leave such a pricey toy out for anyone to take," she had said, her words dripping with a vindictive pleasure that made my blood run cold. The realization hit hard, the knowledge that Marlene's envy had driven her to commit the unthinkable. The sports car wasn't just a vehicle, it was the embodiment of our achievements, and she had stolen it as if to say that our dreams were nothing but playthings for her whims. The envy of a mother-in-law had shattered the quiet suburb, the ripple effects of her actions spreading out to touch every corner of our once peaceful lives. The morning sun had yet to chase away the shadows of dawn when I stepped onto the driveway, a routine farewell on my lips, ready to wish Jamie off to work. But where there should have been the proud silhouette of our sapphire sports car, there was nothing. An inexplicable void greeted me, a gaping maw where our beloved car had been. A chill crept up my spine, the early morning air suddenly heavy, laden with a sense of foreboding. My hands, trembling as if caught in a winter gale, fumbled with my phone. I punched in the numbers to the local police with a growing sense of dread. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice was a lifeline in the thickening fog of my panic. Our car, it's been stolen, I managed to stammer out, the words tasting of disbelief. It was there last night, and now, it's just gone. I could hear the scratching of a pen, the mundane sound a stark contrast to the chaos brewing within me. "Ma'am, please stay on the line. We'll send an officer to your location immediately. Can you give me a description of the vehicle?" As I recounted the details, the reality of the situation sank in. My dream, our dream, had been unceremoniously snatched away in the cover of night. The connection to the dispatcher was a thin thread, a tenuous hold-on composure that threatened to snap with each passing second. The phone buzzed with a call-waiting tone, and a glance at the screen showed Marlene's number. "Hold on, there's another call coming in." "It might be important," I told the dispatcher. I switched lines, a part of me naively hoping for a simple explanation, a mistake perhaps. "Marlene?" I inquired, my voice a mixture of hope and rising anxiety. "Hello, Ava," Marlene's voice oozed through the speaker, syrupy and cool. "I guess you can say goodbye to your $100,000 car." Her words were a sledgehammer, shattering the fragile hope that this was all just a terrible misunderstanding. "What did you do, Marlene?" I demanded, my voice sharp, the edges of fear giving way to anger. There was a pause, a hesitation that was unlike her. Then, with a theatrical sigh, she continued, "Oh, Ava, you always did care too much about material things. It's just a car." "Just a car?" I echoed, incredulity lacing my tone. "Marlene, that car was more than just steel and paint. It was a symbol of our hard work. You know that. Why would you take it? Where is it?" A chuckle, cold and mirthless, was her only reply. "All I can say is, things have a way of disappearing around here. You should be more careful with your possessions." I switched back to the dispatcher, my heart racing. "I need to report a theft, and I think I know who took it." My voice was a mix of resolve and a growing thirst for justice. "My mother-in-law just admitted to taking our car." The officers arrived with the efficiency and professionalism that the suburbs rarely needed but were grateful to have. They listened as I recounted the call, their expressions a mixture of sympathy and disbelief. As they took notes, Jamie paced behind me, his usual calm demeanor shattered like the peace of our once quiet morning. "I can't believe this, my own mother," he muttered, his words punctuated by a helplessness that echoed my own. In the hours that followed, the absence of our car became more than a physical loss. It was the disappearance of trust, of family bonds, and of the belief that some lines could never be crossed. The quiet suburb had awakened not to the song of birds but to the discordant melody of betrayal. I stood in the sterile glow of the police station, the hum of fluorescent lights mixing with the muffled voices of duty and distress. My hands were cold, clasped together to stop them from shaking, as I waited for the detective to return. The walls bore witness to countless stories of woe, and now they would absorb mine. Detective Martinez returned, a folder thick with the scent of fresh ink and bad news in his hands. "We found her," he announced without preamble, his voice betraying no emotion. "Found who?" I feigned ignorance, though my heart raced with the knowledge of who he meant. "Your mother-in-law, Mrs. Thompson," he said as he opened the folder and laid out photographs taken just hours ago. There she was, MIL, sitting at a diner with a cup of coffee, and a stack of bills so high it would make a banker blink. How could she? The words escaped my lips, a whisper lost in the buzzing of the station. Detective Martinez offered a look of sympathy that didn't quite reach his eyes. "She's at the precinct now. Sold your car to a local dealership. They had no idea it was stolen." I shook my head, trying to comprehend. "But why?" "That's what we're going to find out," he replied, standing up. "You can come with me if you want to be there for the questioning." I nodded, rising to follow him, my legs stiff as if they too protested this reality. The precinct's interrogation room was colder than the rest of the building, a small box of a space with a table that seemed to hold the weight of the world. MIL sat there, cuffed, her face a mask of something I couldn't quite discern. Was it regret? Fear? It was hard to tell with the woman who had, until today, been an enigma wrapped in suburban banality. "Why did you do it?" I asked, my voice steady though it threatened to break. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine, and for a moment, I saw something akin to sorrow. I just wanted to know what it felt like," she said, her voice a hoarse whisper. "To feel what?" I pressed, needing to understand. "To feel like you, successful, admired, looked up to." Her voice trailed off, and she looked away, her posture deflated. The detective interjected, "You realize you've committed a serious crime, Mrs. Thompson?" MIL's gaze returned to me, pleading. "I never meant for it to go this far. It was just a moment of madness." I leaned forward, the anger and betrayal coalescing into a cold resolve. "And now, because of that moment, you're going to face the consequences." MIL's eyes filled with tears, but they did nothing to quell the fire of my resolve. "Please," she begged, "I know I've wronged you, but I'm still your family." I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor like a gavel, sentencing her. "You can say hello to a $1 million lawsuit," I declared, the words sealing her fate as much as they shattered the last vestige of our familial bond. The room was silent, save for the sound of MIL's quiet sobs and the detective's pen scratching across his notepad. The reckoning had come, not with the fury of a storm, but with the cold finality of a door closing, never to be opened again. The courtroom was a stark arena, a stage set for the drama of justice, where the truth would be stripped bare, for all to see. It was the day of reckoning for Marlene, my mother-in-law, once a figure of whimsical chaos, now the defendant in a suit too somber for her vibrant personality. I sat rigid on the hard wooden bench, a plaintiff poised between the twin pillars of anxiety and determination. My attorney, Mr. Hughes, patted my hand reassuringly as we awaited the judge's entrance. "Remember, Ava, just stick to the facts. Let her actions speak for themselves," he murmured. I nodded, though my stomach twisted into knots. The facts were cold, hard things, but the emotions they stirred within me were anything but. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmurs of the gallery. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Andrews." We stood in unison, a wave of formality washing over the room as the judge took her seat. "Please be seated. Let's proceed with the case of Thompson versus Thompson." The air was thick with anticipation as Mr. Hughes presented our case. Exhibit A, the callous phone call. Exhibit B, the CCTV footage. Exhibit C, Marlene's bank records showing a cascade of debts. Marlene's attorney, a young man with a sharp suit and sharper eyes, tried to paint a picture of desperation, of a woman pushed to the brink by society's unforgiving nature. But it was Marlene's turn on the stand that everyone awaited, a moment of human frailty amid the legal posturing. "Mrs. Thompson, can you explain these gambling debts?" Mr. Hughes asked, his voice echoing in the hushed courtroom. Marlene wrung her hands, her gaze flickering to mine before settling on the wooden grain of the witness stand. "I was trying to win it all back," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The money I lost, the time. I thought if I could just get one big win, I could make everything right again." "And you thought selling Ava's car would solve your problems?" Mr. Hughes pressed on. "I didn't. I wasn't thinking." "It was a mistake," Marlene faltered, the mask of defiance crumbling. From the gallery, a soft sob broke the silence. It was Jamie, torn between his roles as a supportive spouse and a betrayed son. "Marlene," I found myself speaking, not as the wrong daughter-in-law, but as a woman seeing another's world unravel. "Why didn't you come to us for help?" Her eyes met mine, and in them, I saw the raw pain of pride and regret. "Because I couldn't bear it," she confessed. "You had everything together, and I was falling apart." The truth was a dam breaking, the waters of hidden grief and shame flooding the courtroom. Marlene had been drowning, not in the physical sense, but in a sea of her own making, her pride a leaden weight. The judge's gavel brought us back to the present, to the legalities that would dictate Marlene's future. "Given the evidence presented, this court has no choice but to rule in favor of the plaintiff," Judge Andrews declared, her voice the final note in the symphony of justice. The gallery exhaled, a collective release of tension, as Marlene was led away, her fate sealed by her own hand. The unveiling had been more than just the exposure of a crime, it had laid bare the human heart, with all its complexities and contradictions. And as I left the courtroom, the weight of the day heavy upon my shoulders, I knew that the story of Marlene, of our family, would be a cautionary tale, a reminder of how easily the fabric of our lives could unravel. The dust had settled, and the courtroom drama that had riveted our small town had finally drawn to a close. Marlene's sentence was handed down, and with it, the expectation that life would return to normal. But normalcy had shifted, and in its place was a new reality that seemed alien to the quiet suburbia I once knew. I found myself sitting on the porch, the cool evening breeze carrying whispers of the day's events. Jamie sat beside me, his presence a silent pillar of strength amidst the turmoil. "Ava," he began, his voice a low hum in the quiet of the twilight, "I'm so sorry for everything she put you through. I placed a hand over his, squeezing it gently. "Jamie, you have nothing to apologize for. We were both blindsided by this." He shook his head, his gaze lost to the horizon. "But it was my mother, my family. It's hard not to feel responsible in some way." I sighed, the weight of the entire ordeal pressing against my chest. "Family doesn't come with a manual, love. We just do the best we can with what we have." We sat in silence, each lost in our reflections until the whispering leaves seemed to urge us to speak our truths. "I keep thinking about the last thing she said in court," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. "I just wanted to feel like I mattered." "That's what she said." "It's been echoing in my mind ever since." Jamie's grip tightened. "I know. It's been echoing in mine, too. She lost her way, Ava. She got caught up in wanting more and forgot what she already had." The moon hung above, a silent witness to our confessions. It cast a silver glow, painting our world in shades of gray where once I only saw black and white. "You know, the strangest thing is," Jamie continued, "I always thought our lives were too mundane for her taste. But maybe it was the stability she craved after all. That's just it, isn't it?" I mused. "We strive for excitement, for something extraordinary, but when life throws us these curveballs, we realize the value of the ordinary days we took for granted." A dog barked in the distance, a comforting sound that spoke of normal life outside our bubble of sorrow. "I think I've learned something from all this," I said, turning to face Jamie. "I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, nor does it excuse the hurt caused. But it's a step towards healing, for both of us." Jamie nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. Yeah. And I've learned that even though we can't choose our family, we can choose how we let their actions affect us. We can choose to move forward, even when it feels like we're stuck in the past. The night wrapped around us, a cloak of solace as we contemplated the future. There was much to rebuild, trust to be mended, and wounds to be healed. But in this moment of quiet reflection, there was also hope. Hope that with time, the echoes of the past would fade into whispers, and our lives would find a new rhythm, perhaps not as innocent as before, but wiser and more resilient. We'll get through this, Ava. Together, Jamie said, his voice firm with resolve. I leaned into him, finding comfort in his certainty. Together, I echoed. The reflection had brought pain, but in its wake, it also promised the possibility of growth. As the stars twinkled above, like distant beacons of light, I knew that the story of the stolen car would always be a part of us, but it wouldn't define us. We were more than a single chapter of chaos, we were a narrative still being written, each day a fresh page to start anew. The morning Jack left for Mexico, the sun was a pale disk in a sky too blue for my mood. Lily, our 4-year-old whirlwind of curiosity, was still asleep, her small hand clutching the edge of the blanket. Jack was bustling around the bedroom, his suitcase gaping open as he checked his list twice, thrice. Do you really need to take the big suitcase? I asked, the edge in my voice sharper than I intended. Jack looked up, his eyes a soft apology. I know it seems like a lot, but Mom wants to bring back gifts for everyone. It's been ages since the whole family got together like this. I nodded, trying to keep the hurt from showing. I just wish, my voice trailed off. He crossed the room and wrapped me in a hug. I wish you and Lily could come too. You know that, right? Lily chose that moment to toddle into the room, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Daddy, you go on airplane? She asked, her voice thick with sleep. Jack knelt down and took her in his arms. Yeah, princess. Daddy's going to see the family with Grandma and Grandpa. But I'll bring you a big surprise, okay? She seemed satisfied with the promise, nestling her head against his shoulder. After Jack left, the house echoed with an unfamiliar silence. Lily played with her toys, unaware of the tension that had seeped into the walls. I was clearing up the breakfast dishes when my phone pinged with the first notification. A hotel booking in Cancun, enough to make my heart skip a beat. I stared at the screen, the numbers glaring back at me. My fingers trembled as I typed out a message to Jack. Did you just book a hotel on our credit card? That's a lot of zeros, Jack. His reply came minutes later, it's all under control. Marie's handling it. Trust me. But trust was a currency in short supply. As the days passed, each notification was a fresh wound, a tally of experiences we were excluded from. I tried to lose myself in work and in making days fun for Lily, who asked more than once why we couldn't go to the beach with Daddy. The day before they were due back, I sat Lily down for a talk. Daddy will be home tomorrow. We can show him how well we've managed, just us girls. She nodded, a frown creasing her small forehead. Will he be happy to see us? I pulled her into a hug, the weight of my own doubts a heavy cloak. Very happy, I promised, hoping my words were true. The morning they returned, I stood by the window, watching the driveway. The minivan turned the corner, and my heart raced. 2 weeks felt like 2 months, and the reunion I had imagined was tinged with the residue of betrayal. As the family poured out, laughter and chatter spilling into the quiet morning, I braced myself for the confrontation, for the explanations. But nothing could have prepared me for the truth that was waiting to unravel the knot of misunderstandings between us. The family minivan pulled into the driveway just past noon, its tires crunching over the gravel like the ticking of a clock that had finally wound down. The door burst open, and the cascade of Jack's family spilled out in a riot of color and noise, a stark contrast to the gray quiet that had settled over the house in their absence. Lily pressed her face against the living room window, her hands leaving smudges on the glass. Mommy, look. They're back. I forced a smile, lifting her into my arms so she could get a better view. Yes, sweetheart, Daddy's home. But as I watched them, a knot tightened in my stomach. They moved with a peculiar haste, their laughter not reaching their eyes. And then I saw Jack, trailing behind the rest, his face drawn, eyes that once sparkled with mischief, now dull and averted. I set Lily down and stepped outside, the screen door slamming behind me with a finality that made me wince. Jack, I called, my voice steady, despite the tremor I felt inside. He stopped, his shoulders tensing. Slowly, he turned to face me. Hey, he said, a word so simple and yet so laden with unspoken tension. What's going on, Jack? Why does everyone look like they're at a funeral? My voice cracked, betraying my feigned calmness. Before he could answer, his mother, a sturdy woman with lines of kindness etched into her face, approached me. Let's go inside, dear. There's a lot to explain. We settled in the living room, a mismatched gathering of in-laws and nieces and nephews, all eyes on me. Jack sat next to me, took my hand, his grip tight. Marie wanted to have one last adventure with all of us, Jack began, his voice a whisper of its usual strength. She's been sick. Very sick. The room went still, the air heavy, as if everyone was holding their breath. Sick? How sick? I asked, the words a fragile bridge across the chasm that had opened between us. It's terminal, his father said, the stoic man I'd known for years now struggling to keep his voice level. She didn't want the world to shrink to hospital rooms and sympathy. She wanted to live fully until the end. I glanced around the room, at the faces marked with shared grief, and understood the weight of the secret they had carried. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, feeling the sting of exclusion all over again. We wanted to, Jack's sister added, her eyes red-rimmed, but Marie was adamant. She didn't want pity. She wanted this trip to be about joy, not sadness. And the charges? I pressed, the practical side of me needing answers. Jack squeezed my hand. Marie. She insisted. She wanted to make sure you and Lily were part of it, in a way. It was her gift to you both. I struggled to digest it all, the enormity of the situation pressing down on me. A gift, I repeated, the word tasting bitter. Yes, Jack said, his eyes finally meeting mine. She's leaving us with memories, not just bills. She wanted to pay for it all, didn't want to leave any debts behind. I looked down at our intertwined hands, at the man I had loved and raged against in equal measure these past weeks. In that moment, the anger began to ebb, replaced by an aching sorrow for the sister-in-law I barely knew and the family that was grappling with an impending loss. We have pictures, Jack said softly. Marie wanted to document everything, for you, for Lily. When you're ready, we can look at them together. Lily, sensing the shift in the room, came over and climbed into my lap, her small presence a balm to the raw edges of my emotions. Is Daddy sad? She asked, looking up at me with wide, innocent eyes. Just a little, baby. But he's also very happy to see us, I replied, my voice steadier as I wrapped my arms around her. Jack leaned his head against mine, a silent thank you for understanding, for the forgiveness that was beginning to take root amidst the chaos of our upturned lives. The house was quiet, the kind of hush that falls after a storm, when even the world seems to hold its breath. The family had retreated to their respective corners, grappling with the raw edges of Marie's truth, leaving me and Jack sitting side by side on the creaky old couch that had become an unwitting confidant to our family's deepest moments. Jack broke the silence, his voice a strained whisper. I wanted to protect you from this, from the pain of knowing. I turned to him, my heart a tangle of hurt and compassion. But it's our pain to share, isn't it? We're in this together. He nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. I know. And I'm sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing. The air between us was thick with things unsaid, a decade of shared history that had never been so tested. We need to talk about what this means for us, for Lily, I said, the pragmatic side of me surfacing despite the emotion. We need a plan. Jack reached for a photo album that lay on the coffee table, its pages filled with snapshots of the trip. "First, we remember her as she wanted to be remembered," he said, flipping it open. The first photo was of Marie, her head thrown back in laughter, the backdrop a tapestry of wildflowers and blue skies. "She looks so alive," I murmured. "That's exactly how she wanted to go out," Jack said, tracing the outline of her face with his finger. Alive. The room was silent again, save for the soft crinkling of the album pages as we turned them. Each photo told a story of defiance, of a life being lived to the fullest even as it slipped away. As we neared the end of the album, Jack pulled out an envelope tucked in the back cover. "She left this for us," he said, handing it to me. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers, pulling out a letter written in Marie's bold, looping script. "Dear family," I read aloud, my voice steady, "if you're reading this, it means I'm on my final adventure, one I have to take alone." Jack's hand found mine, his grip grounding me as I continued. "I've lived a beautiful life, filled with love and laughter, and I don't want you to mourn for what's lost. Instead, celebrate what we had, and look after each other. That's my final wish." The letter went on, each word a testament to her spirit, to her unyielding desire to leave on her own terms. When I finished, I folded it carefully and placed it back in the envelope. "We will honor her wish," I said, more to myself than to Jack. "We will," Jack agreed. "And we'll start by living fully, just like she did. For her, for us, for Lily." The conversation that followed was long overdue. We talked about how to explain Marie's condition to Lily, about the support we'd need to navigate the coming months, about how we could honor Marie's memory in our daily lives. And through it all, the revelation that had seemed so daunting at first began to weave itself into the fabric of our family story, not as a tear, but as a patchwork piece that, though different, still held a place of its own. As night fell, and Lily's soft breathing signaled her journey to dreams, Jack and I sat in the dim light, a sense of unity slowly knitting back together the frayed ends of our bond. "We'll get through this," Jack said, his voice a promise in the darkness. "We will," I affirmed, "together." And as we turned off the lights and headed to bed, the weight of the revelation was still there, but it felt a little lighter, shared between us, a burden we would carry together, as a family. Days after the revelation, life had settled into a strange new rhythm. There was an undercurrent of sadness in the house, but also a kind of shared strength that hadn't been there before. It was during these days that I began to notice the secret smile that would occasionally cross Jack's face. It was a private, wistful curve of his lips that spoke of memories only he was privy to. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun paint the sky with the colors of Marie's vibrant life, I finally asked, "Jack, what's behind the smile I keep seeing?" He looked at me, the twilight casting shadows across his face. "It's Marie," he admitted. She made me promise to keep some things just between us. Little jokes, stories, her way of making sure part of her stayed with me alone. I felt a pang of jealousy, but it was quickly softened by understanding. "Can you share one with me?" "Just one," I pleaded softly. He pondered for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, one story. Did you know, on the trip, she convinced everyone to call me Capitan because I was so terrible at reading the map? She said I was leading the expedition to nowhere." I laughed, the sound mingling with the crickets' evening chorus. "That sounds like her," I said, picturing the scene in my mind. "Thank you for sharing that with me." Jack's hand found mine, and we sat in silence for a while, lost in our thoughts. The days that followed were a mixture of light and shadow. In the mornings, I'd often catch Jack looking at old photos or staring into the distance, his mind clearly miles away. But he was present, too, playing with Lily, helping around the house, talking about Marie in ways that made her feel close again. One afternoon, while Lily napped, I found Jack in the garage, rummaging through a box labeled Mexico. "What are you looking for?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. He didn't look up. "Marie gave me something, a sort of, well, it's silly, but it meant a lot." Curiosity piqued, I watched as he pulled out a small, hand-painted maraca. "She gave this to me the first night. told me whenever I miss her, I should give it a shake and she'd be right there, causing a ruckus with me. It was so like Marie to find humor in the face of her reality. I walked over and took the maraca, giving it a gentle shake. The sound was cheerful, a stark contrast to the quiet that had settled over us. "You know, she left us all something," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. "She left us the gift of remembering her joy, her rebellion against sorrow." I handed the maraca back to him. "And we'll keep her memory alive every day," I promised. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, Lily asked about the maraca. Jack told her a story about her Aunt Marie, a tale full of laughter and silliness, and for the first time in weeks, our home was filled with the echo of joy. After Lily's bedtime, Jack and I lingered at the table, the maraca sitting between us. "Marie was right, you know," Jack said, picking it up and shaking it lightly. "She's still here, in the laughter, in the stories, in this." I reached out and stilled his hand, holding it and the maraca in mine. "And she's here," I said, placing my other hand over his heart. "Always." Jack's eyes met mine, and there it was again, the secret smile. But this time I understood. It was a smile of shared memories, of love that didn't end with a goodbye. We sat there, hands entwined, the maraca a bridge between the past and present, between sorrow and the smiles that would come, secret no more. The legacy of Marie was not something that could be touched or held, but rather felt and lived. It was in the way the morning light would spill through the curtains, in the warmth of a shared glance, in the echoes of laughter that still hung in the corners of the rooms. The house had become a living monument to her spirit, and every day we found new ways to honor her memory. Jack had started a project in the backyard, something he said Marie had always wanted. A garden, vibrant and wild, much like she had been. We spent hours there, our hands in the dirt, planting and nurturing life, as if in doing so, we were somehow keeping a piece of her alive. "I want to plant sunflowers," Lily declared one afternoon as we stood surveying the garden. Aunt Marie loved them. Jack knelt beside her, a tender smile touching his lips. "Then sunflowers we shall plant, my little gardener. A whole row of them, standing tall and bright, just like her." Lily clapped her hands with delight, and I watched them, feeling a swell of love for this family that had been through so much. As the days turned into weeks, the garden began to flourish, each plant a testament to the life we were determined to celebrate. The sunflowers grew tallest, their golden heads swaying in the breeze, as if nodding along to the laughter that now came more easily. One evening, as we sat on the porch, our hands stained with earth and the scent of flowers in the air, Jack spoke of Marie's legacy. "Do you think she'd be proud of what we're doing?" he asked, his eyes searching mine for affirmation. I reached out, taking his hand in mine. "I know she would. We're not just growing a garden, Jack. We're growing hope, and that was what Marie was all about." Jack's gaze turned towards the garden, watching as the last rays of the sun danced over the petals and leaves. "She wanted to make a difference, leave a mark. I think this garden, it's a start." "It's more than a start," I countered gently. "It's a continuation. Her passion, her vitality, it's all around us. We're living her legacy, not just remembering it." Jack nodded slowly, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I just wish she could see it." "She can," I said firmly. "She sees it through us, through Lily, through every person whose life she touched. And this," I gestured to the garden, "this is just one way we keep her with us." We sat in silence then, watching as the twilight crept over the garden, turning it into a silhouette of dreams and memories. It was in that peaceful moment that I knew Marie's legacy was not just about what we created in her name, but how we lived because of her influence. "You're right," Jack said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Her legacy is in every choice we make, every laugh we share, every memory we hold on to. And in this garden, it's like she's still here, growing alongside us." I squeezed his hand, my heart full. "Always," I agreed. "Her spirit is the lifeblood of this place." As night settled around us, the garden became a shadowy oasis where the past met the present, and hope bloomed in the fertile ground of a legacy that would never die. It was a legacy of love, laughter, and the unwavering courage to keep going, no matter what. And as we stood up to go inside, I knew that with every sunrise, with every bloom that opened to the sky, Marie would be smiling down on us, her legacy secure in the hands of those who loved her most. In the wake of Marie's passing, the concept of wealth had been irrevocably altered for Jack and Lily. Where once there might have been aspirations for material gain, now there was a profound understanding that the truest form of wealth was found in the moments they shared and the love that bound them together. It was a lesson hard learned, but one that had become the foundation of their existence. The 6th chapter opens with a scene that perfectly encapsulates this new philosophy. Jack is seen sitting at the kitchen table, his brows furrowed over a sea of bills and papers. Lily is painting at her easel nearby, her strokes bold and confident. "Daddy, why do you look so sad?" Lily's voice cuts through the silence, innocent and concerned. Jack looks up, his face softening. "I'm not sad, pumpkin. Just thinking about grown-up things." "Like money?" she asks, her paintbrush pausing in midair. "Yes, like money," he admits, sigh escaping his lips. Lily puts down her brush and walks over, her small hand finding his. "Aunt Marie said that love is the best kind of wealth. Do we have that?" Jack's eyes meet hers, and there is a wealth of emotion in that gaze. "Oh, Lily. We have that in spades." They share a smile, and it's a poignant reminder of Marie's enduring wisdom. The narrative then follows Jack as he navigates the complexities of his new life, the financial strain made bearable by the outpouring of support from the community. Friends and neighbors, many touched by Marie's generosity in the past, come forward with acts of kindness. There are home-cooked meals, offers to babysit Lily, and even anonymous donations. One evening, as Jack is tucking Lily into bed, she murmurs sleepily, "Everyone loves us so much, Daddy. Is it because we're rich with love?" Jack, who is perched on the edge of her bed, brushes a stray lock of hair from her forehead. "Yes, my dear. Love has a way of multiplying. The more you give, the more you have. But Aunt Marie gave all her love away. Why isn't she here to get it back?" Lily's question is a whisper against the quiet of the room. Jack takes a deep breath, his heart aching with the weight of her inquiry. Sometimes love is like a boomerang. It doesn't come back in the way we expect. Aunt Marie's love is coming back to us through all the people she cared for. And that's a kind of magic that never ends. Lily nods, her eyes fluttering closed, a contented smile playing on her lips. "Magic love," she whispers. "I like that." The chapter closes with Jack sitting on the porch, the stars twinkling above him as he reflects on the journey so far. A neighbor, Mr. Wilson, joins him, and they talk about the community, the garden, and Marie's lasting impact. "Jack, you've got something special here," Mr. Wilson says, his voice gruff with emotion. "You and Lily, you've got the kind of wealth that money can't buy." Jack nods, his gaze on the garden where the shadows play. "I'm beginning to realize that. And I'm grateful for it every single day." They sit in companionable silence, the night around them a testament to the enduring power of love. It's clear that while Marie may be gone, the wealth of love she left behind continues to grow and sustain those she left behind. The legacy is not just in the tangible, but in the connections and the community that thrive in the space where her memory